All right, all right, all right. Welcome back. Today, Misty and I are going to be talking about bad tenants and the ugly side of investing. Everybody talks about the good stuff, oh, I made a lot of money. The big bad, I had a huge check, but people kind of hide that other half that they don't really talk about. And I think some of that's just for the whole, to not make it look glamorous. You know what I mean? I'm sure you guys are probably, I know, Misty, you've seen this, like the Instagram and stuff, and they got the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris,
Yep.
tons of them, right? So, we were going to chit chat about bad tenants and some of the ugly things that you'll see. Hopefully, you don't ever come across these. But these are a few items that we picked out of things that we've come across as well. And I think that they can provide some value, kind of what the situation was and how we handled it and what we learned from it. So, the one that I'd like to start with that I think is entertaining is being paid in full and the carpet's ripped out. I'm gonna let Misty kind of explain that one. This was many, many, many years ago. So I'm gonna let you drop that, Misty. Go ahead. So what was the situation on that? That was about 2013.
Somewhere in there. So we had a tenant that at the time we had a property management company handling it, but we had a tenant that wanted to put 6 months up front, pay for 6 months up front. She had recently gone through a divorce, and so her credit wasn't the best, and so she wanted to pay 6 months up front. She just got a settlement, and she had, I think, a big German Shepherd or something. I can't remember. And
How much did she pay up front though? So 6 months, but
six
what?
months,
But how much was the amount?
I can't remember at the time.
I remember
What was
it was $7,000. I was so damn excited.
it?
I'll never forget that because I was actually teaching class. I was teaching class, and you came to me and you're like, "Hey, we have this tenant, and they'll pay $7,000 up front," and I was like, looked at you and I was like, hell yeah, $7,000, right?
Green light.
That's green light. But little did I know there are reasons why they were doing that, right? And so I was just so damn excited about the money. I'm like, seven
Yeah,
grand. I'm like,
guaranteed.
guaranteed, check paid. That's it. They're in for 6 months, and that house was paid off as well. There
Yes,
was no We bought that house cash,
correct.
so we let her in.
So we let her in. Everything was going smoothly, I guess, for a few months, and then I think we had someone go by to work on a maintenance issue or something.
Well, we weren't self managing then, right?
No, we had a property manager.
And did we use the same one that we bought the house from, or was it? We
I
hadn't
think it
switched.
was. I
Okay.
think it was the one that was already in place. And so, yeah, they had a maintenance person go by to check on something, and they're like, did you know that the tenant had ripped up all the carpet? And we're like,
And
huh?
this is months in though. This wasn't
Yeah.
done. I mean, she had been there for almost 6 months by the time we figured out the carpet
Yeah, it
was
was
ripped
about
out.
4.5 months in, I think, somewhere in there. And so we're like, what? So we had sent someone out to go verify and see what was going on. And she said that the dog had either had some accidents, or I think it was actually
Yeah.
scratching the carpet up and just leaving patches. And she got tired of seeing the patches. So she just decided to take all the carpet up.
And that was a lot of carpet
Yeah.
because if I remember right, the house it was
All the bedrooms, the living room, and I think the dining room.
it's
Yeah.
like a 1,700 square feet house. So the only
No, it was 1850.
1850. We still own that, by the way. But that house was so only the kitchen was the only part. So I
Kitchen
mean,
and the
that's a
bathrooms.
lot of
Yeah.
damn carpet, like to go rip out. You know what I mean? And not hire someone to do it. So she rips the carpet out. We're 4 to 5 months in on the
didn't
lease.
didn't say a word about it. And then I guess the dog was also, causing some issues with the fence and yeah.
Well, I remember too that tenant was a problem in the sense that
Well, we
sh
come to find out, we've had heard from the neighbors once we started poking around that there'd been a little bit of police activity
yes,
over there.
yeah,
I think she was had some drug deals going on or something.
yeah, and this wasn't like it's not a bad neighborhood either. Like we
No.
we we made sure like the house this particular house was a house that we would have lived in
Hmm.
if we were like, hey, you know what? we got in a pinch, it's paid off. Let's go. Well, that was kind of our strategy, anyways. Was just in case we'll have this one paid off as
It's
a
got a HOA.
yeah, it's like a break glass in case of emergency kind of stuff, right? So
Yeah.
so we ended up ripped the carpet out, all that. So then what did she? I mean, what did we end up doing with her? I remember,
So
but what was the
yeah, we had accepted rent ahead of time, so of course we couldn't kick her out during that time. But come to find out, we didn't find that information out till about 4.5, 5 months in. So it was actually perfect timing because then we could just say, "Hey, you're in violation of
right?
your lease, and so we're going to give you till the end of that 6 month period to find a new place,
Yeah.
and we're not going to continue past that."
And
And
that
so,
was, and I know like when I see on Facebook like some of the groups and stuff, people are like, "I got paid up front," and the first thing I think is, "Oh hell no, this
don't do it.
don't do it, don't get rid of it, just give it back." No, because usually a paid up front, a paid in full upfront tenant is not that they're all problems, but you're gonna run into you don't have the luxury to kick them out without giving a refund. So if
Mhm.
you accept $7,000, right, and then you go and say, "All right, let's divvy this up," and then especially if it's paid off, the house is paid off, and you go and spend a good amount of that on whatever else, maybe it was something personal or something business, that money's gone,
Yeah,
right? And so, luckily, we didn't find it until later. So the lesson for us was
don't do that.
just don't do that. And we haven't since, right? We haven't
just
ever,
just make sure that they actually qualify
right?
with everything else. So there's some people that just want to make sure they don't spend the money or whatever, and so just screen your tenants and make sure they pass the normal qualifications.
Yeah. And so now, instead of accepting that, we always accept what double deposit, that kind of stuff. We can
Yeah,
double deposit, or those are the main items. Like
and
if you're
then
going to accept
if
something
you're
like that,
concerned that they might be a higher risk or something, then you might schedule more inspections more regularly.
yeah. That's one of the ones that I say sticks out in my head the most out of all the ones that we've done, because it was just between the police coming in, and then the carpet being ripped up. It just, I was like, the hell's this tenant thinking? And it just, that one's always stuck in my head. So when I see stuff like that on Facebook, it just takes me right back to that time of being like, and we're not and again, one thing that Misty and I've always done too, we don't, well now, you know, but uh, especially that time, we were very like, we don't ever meet the tenants. So now it's property management's different. You deal with
Yeah.
the tenants, but at that time, we never, like, we were just straight up investors. No one knew that we owned it. So we would just drive by and we look out and there's carpet. We're like, oh,
Or a
just
cop car.
or a cop car. We're just shaking our head, going, man, this is not that kind of neighborhood. We bought specifically for that area, school district, and all that, just in case. Because at that time, what, Jake was a baby? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were carrying him around when we bought that. Like we were,
yeah.
we were
In the carrier.
in the carrier, lugging him from house to house. So of course he's no baby now. So now he's the merc with the mouth is what I call him. Sounds like Deadpool. If you ever meet Jake, you'll know. You'll be like, man, I think their kid's Deadpool. Um, but no, that one sticks out for me a lot. I'll never forget that. So another one that was kind of recent, not too terribly recent, but I'd say, well, more,
Couple years.
so yeah, is the tree was already there. It's kind of what I call it. That tree was already there. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Misty explain that one. What that situation was. Kind of run through that.
So this was a tenant that had lived for a couple of years in a property, and when he moved in, it was managed by a property management company, and
We own this property.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then when he moved out, by the time he moved out, we were managing it. But in those couple of years that he lived there, he had allowed, you know, trees to grow right next to the foundation. And I mean, they got pretty big. They were touching the roof of the house. And so we had charged that back to him at security deposit time when it was time to release the security deposit to him because those weren't there before, and he's responsible for maintenance, lawn maintenance, and all that. And he's like, well, those trees were there before, and all upset because we had charged to remove them. And I was like, no, we have picture proof. And so
And we did have
we
picture
did.
proof.
And so I showed it to him. He was still upset, but that's just another thing that made us hire out a company to go take pictures of the
Yeah.
property before and after. And that way it's all done by a third party and not us.
Well, even we ended up with a nasty gram too. I remember that. That was like you got a nasty gram from
Yes.
some, and it wasn't even like it was like one of those like prepaid lawyers or whatever.
Hmm.
I believe so. So they get paid to write nasty grams. That's pretty much as far as it goes. So, and I just remember that tenant for you kind of telling me, man, this individual's a pain in the ass. Like they just, but that's why you start hiring out, because before
Correct.
the pictures that we, well, so on that one the pictures were different because they weren't different. They were not taken. The original pictures were not taken by you
Us.
or
Hmm.
who we had hired out, who we now hire out. It was
Correct.
originally by the property management company.
Correct.
So their pictures sucked. And right, they weren't detailed. They weren't, if I remember right, is that right? They weren't very detailed. They weren't very,
There were pictures there. They just weren't that detailed. And some of them were taken kind of as the sun was setting. And so some of them weren't the best quality. So yeah, we definitely hire that out now.
it's okay, Misty. You can let it go. You can say the pictures suck. No one's gonna get mad. The individual who took the pictures, you're like, hey, those are mine. But hey, I mean, it is what it is, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, so, but yeah, that's why now. I mean, so now when you do those things, I mean, so what's your, because of that, as far as lesson wise, like what was your protocol now? Like, what do you do?
So we hire the same company that does before and after pictures, basically move in and move out pictures. And so they have a checklist that they go through and make sure they document, every single area and like the filters, and they actually put the date and initials on the filter when they move in and stuff. That way, if you want to do checks afterwards, you can see if that same filter is there.
And we've seen some dirty, dirty filters. In fact, recently we saw a filter that we went to, and Misty wrote her name on it. It was a house that we were finishing up for a burr, and Misty wrote her name on it. We went back to go look at some stuff to kind of see how the foundation was fixed, and then she
I still
like
have my name on
still had her name on it.
it.
She's
And
like,
changed it
this
again.
has never been changed. And tenants don't realize that that's a problem that can mess your AC up.
Yes. And
So,
so they're going to be complaining in July and August when the AC goes out. And it's going to take a while because parts take a while to come in. And then you're going to charge it back to them.
what's funny is like what's funny about that situation is that I think back like before you and I met, just me as a teenager, like the last thing I ever thought about was an air filter. I'm still to this day I'm like, air filter? Like, I know you need to do it, but before we went into real estate, the last thing I was thinking was like the air filter is very important. But now that's such a huge deal. Like if that can cause so many problems down the road. So they took pictures of the air filter.
Yep.
They took pictures of everything, and that's just
Interior, exterior,
exterior.
all of that. They also check and make sure that you have your smoke detectors where they're needed.
Because people take those off.
Yes, and they check them and make sure they work.
Well, why do they take them off, Misty?
Yeah, a lot of tenants unfortunately disable the smoke detectors because they either smoke or do the vaping and stuff like that, and
Well,
they're not supposed to.
not all tenants, but you can walk in a property and go, you just look up, like, yeah,
Yeah.
they were smoking.
Yeah, anytime you do inspections, I do recommend that you check those smoke detectors. A lot of the insurance policies have a little clause in there that if it didn't have working smoke detectors and you had your house burned down or
Yeah.
something, then they might not pay it out. So definitely want to make sure that you're checking that and that you're holding your tenants liable for that. If you walk in and it's disabled, you need to serve them a notice.
So that kind of brings me to something. when you walk into a house, I've never asked this question. I want to see what you think. What's the first thing you do? Like, what's the first thing you look at? You walk into, like, you're gonna walk in a house, whether it's inspecting it for, a tenant, or whether like something we're gonna purchase. Like, where do you head? It usually takes me like two seconds, and I've seen the whole house. But what do you do?
First thing I do is smell
Uh,
when I walk
that's
in.
dangerous.
Don't ever open a fridge.
That's dangerous. I gotta ask this. So okay. So you walk in, you hit him with the big smell, like you're on Friday, like big worm, big perm. And then what?
Um,
If you don't throw up, then what?
just take a look around. I'm
Yeah, but where do you head? Like, what's the first thing you look at? You're like,
probably the kitchen.
the kitchen.
Mhm.
First thing I do is look up. And I don't look up in my own house, but the first thing I do at someone else's house is I look up, and I'm like, who screwed something up? And where's the smoke detectors? At what point do you start? I just got. I said, never asked you that. At what point do you start looking up? Like, do you start going? Let me look up here.
When I'm checking for foundation movement and stuff, I'll look up, see, the tops of doorways and stuff, and then look at the air conditioning vents because a lot of times they'll be, the space around it is all black.
Yeah. I think I literally walked through the entire house by myself. Because when we walk in, usually we walk in and we split off. Like, you'll go one way,
Yes.
I go one. Misty takes 20 minutes. I take 1 minute. Our buddy John, the realtor that helped us many, many years ago, he'd be like, he'd always tell us this. Man, Christopher, you were just waiting on Misty. He's always waiting on Misty. But
You're just sitting down chatting.
sitting down
still
chatting the whole
looking
time.
around.
He's like, does she want it? I'm like, I don't know, man. Let's find out. But when we split ways, I think I've actually walked an entire house looking up. Like, almost every time we do it, because we went to go look at the 32 units recently,
Mhm.
and I just completely looked up almost the entire time. I did what you did. I hit him with the big smell and was like,
Mhm.
ooh. And then I was like, let's look up. And I walked looking up the entire thing. So you don't look up till later, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
I gotta look where I'm walking.
Yeah. I mean, I got that visual. I can the
I don't
peripheral
like the
vision.
step and stuff.
Yeah. I think it depends on the house, though. If it's got a lot of stuff in it, yeah, we're gonna look down because left's gonna be just as bad. So if it looks like the upside down off Stranger Things and all jacked up, then I gotta step over everything. So, but yeah, definitely why we do inspections. So is that and you make the tenants pay for that.
For the inspections,
Yeah.
yes.
You don't
So
cover that.
as of lately, the market's kind of changed, and so a lot of people are charging administrative fees,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things we started doing. To do a move in and move out inspection, we charge an admin fee that covers that, and then if the landlord wanted to, do inspections in between, like
Right.
just periodic inspections and stuff, then they can pay for that. But that way, at time when the tenant goes to move out, we have the same company providing the same documentation for the move in and the move out, and you can compare the two.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember. Well, that's their protection too. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's protection for both of you.
yeah,
So
for tenant and the property management company and the owner.
yeah, I think another memorable one that we did, which was not long ago, was one. If you guys are gonna go and purchase something, walk every unit. Don't just walk one and be like, we're good.
Right.
This one was we finished up walking almost all the units. We had one unit left, right, to
Yep.
walk, and it was the last unit,
Yeah.
and we
Plus,
actually,
it was advertised as all units are pretty much the same.
yeah, they're the same. Little did we know that no one saw this last unit ever, and so we walked that those units with my dad,
Mhm.
and then later on we're like, hey, mom, do you want to, my mom, just they invest with us as well. Like, hey, do you want to come look at this? And it was one unit left.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
It was the
It was the
worst.
worst. So I remember this, and I'll tell you my perspective, and you can tell me yours. So I remember this is what I remember. I remember we knocked on the door, and we're like, "Hey, you're here to inspect and take a look," and we're there to purchase,
Mhm.
obviously, but you know we're there to inspect in quotes if you can't see it because you know. But the tenant was kind of pissy, like real like,
Mhm.
"Why are you here? And what are you bothering me for?" And we're like, well, we're here to inspect. Like you've
It,
gotten notice,
it's been scheduled.
been scheduled. Well, you can't come in and without a mask. And I thought, damn, oh man, a mask? Like, whatever we gotta do, man. I just want to see this unit. And there were signs of the unit was probably not like the best shape, but I was not expecting what we walked into. So I remember this is my account. I want to hear Misty's account from her view. I remember when the tenant's like, "I'll get you some mask." I don't carry masks. I didn't carry a mask through the pandemic and things like that. I mean, we just I didn't unless we had to. And by this time, everything was done. All the regulations were up, so nobody's masks aren't out. So things are kind of back to normal. And the tenant was like, "I'll go inside and get you one." And I thought to myself, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. I put the mask on, and I was like, I was pretty grossed out. Like I was like, I'm wearing their mask and I'm inside of their unit. And I'm like, I don't know if this mask is for my protection or for theirs because this thing is disgusting. Like the unit, and I'll let Misty describe her disgusting experiences. Completely disgusting. And I remember just walking in. I'm like, I had the mask on. My mom put one on too, didn't she? And
Mhm.
then was it? Did my dad put his shirt over?
No, they
What?
all had masks.
They had their own.
No.
Oh, they all wore
She
theirs.
yeah, she gave us
What did you
she gave
have?
us all a mask.
Oh, you too. Oh man, dude, I even like my face right now just talking about it. It feels dirty. Like I need some soap, man. It was disgusting. And of course, we're going through the unit, so I'll save that one for Misty. But that's my remember, like just being like, oh crap, and just how disgusting I felt walking in and walking out. What was your account like? What do you remember through that
Yeah, I
beginning?
was nervous about putting on one of their masks, but I believe she got it out of a package. I think it was new. But yeah,
Trusting.
thinking back, I think it was more for our protection against her unit. But yeah, it definitely, even with the mask on, it failed the smell test.
Oh, dude. So okay, so back that up. So did you walk in and take a big whiff of that too?
Yes.
Did you really? Oh, that's
It's like,
horrible. I didn't see. I didn't know you. As long as we've been married and been investing together and all this, I never knew you hit a smell test, man. See now the next thing we go look at, I'm gonna be like, Misty, does it pass?
Yeah, it was pretty gross.
So did you? I mean,
And she like refused to turn on the light, and it's like so dark in there,
yeah.
and there's stuff everywhere, and so you're like trying to be nice about it, and because you're in her space, and but you don't know where you're going, and you can tell there's crap everywhere, and you're
W-
trying not to step into something and not knock over a bunch of stuff if you bump it as you
Yeah.
walk by.
Oops.
It was a mix between hoarding, junk, animal feces.
Yes. So that was
just,
so.
just
Were
disgusting.
you right there next to me as we walked up the stairs?
You mean the stairs that every single step
Every
had a
step.
dirty sock on it?
See, that's why we have different accounts. Because on every step, I saw cat doo doo.
Yes.
I saw cat doo doo on every single step. And then when we
and a
had
and a dirty sock.
and a dirty sock. See, I didn't see the dirty sock. I was so glad to get out of there when I was like I couldn't get out of here fast enough. In fact, I remember standing next to my mom as we walked upstairs, and I was laughing like under the mask. I was trying not to laugh. I was so uncomfortable, all I could do was like laugh about it. Like it's like a
My laughing point came when she was getting on to her son about leaving his pants out. And she's like, "Why didn't you put these pair of pants up?" And I'm looking around and I'm like, "You're worried about a pair of pants?"
it's- no, mine showed up real early when she's like, "Sorry guys, I didn't get a chance to clean up." I was like, "There's no way. There's absolutely zero way you're gonna have enough time to clean this up because this is gonna be the hazmat situation." So yeah, I will never forget. Like that was, and we'd seen some dirty stuff,
Yeah.
but damn, that one like
Cat food all over the place.
I had never seen. I mean, it just and to kind of on a serious note, I did feel bad for the kids because I mean, honestly, like, the situation they were in, it's yeah,
Mhm.
and I do remember. I remember as we were going through this, and I think you can explain this one. They were like, "Well, we can't have the kids. The kids are. I have two young children home alone." And we
Mhm.
were like, and our boys, at the time of us recording this right now, our boys are 9 and 7, and they don't stay home by
Yeah.
themselves. And these kids were younger than that, I think.
I think they're a little older.
Are they? Are you sure? Well, they definitely didn't. No, I'm not making fun of it. It's just, I mean, I felt bad for them. Like there was a definitely disconnect.
I think she actually used that as an excuse to why someone couldn't come into her unit because she knows the condition of her
Oh
unit.
yeah, yeah. You've got to know. You've got to know that. I remember I walked. So I remember just like walking upstairs and standing there next to my mom laughing, and she's like looking at me like, she's doing that like, I mean, you've been around her, she's like, honey, like, kind of hid me and like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, and so I think I couldn't, I just couldn't take it serious. The toilet upstairs didn't work for forever.
Yeah,
But
there was um poop smeared on the wall. Who knows how
man,
long it's been there?
dude, have
And
you seen the movie? Did you grow up watching the movie Problem Child? It was kind of like Problem Child with just yeah, all over the place, right? It's and as we describe this, it's hard because without the smell,
yeah.
you actually like listening to us talk and smelling that, it doesn't do it justice. It was pretty bad. So,
Mhm.
but what did come out of that? What was the best part?
The deduction.
The deduction. It was a forty
We
thousand.
took $40,000
Was
off
it
the
40 or
sales price.
45? It was 45.
45, yeah.
$45,000 off the sales price because of that one unit. And that particular unit was not letting anyone in ever.
Yeah.
Like they never, the
Even when they came to do some repairs and stuff. She had a toilet that wasn't working for at least 3 or 4 years.
and that was not an expensive fix
Yeah.
at all.
Crazy.
It just I look,
That baffles me.
she had to run downstairs to use the bathroom every time. I gotta run. Yeah, I would be like because that's all they had was that one. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then and in fact, if I remember right, when that was repaired, didn't it have like the doo doo water leaked into the ceiling?
Yeah.
Like it was like you know poop water
Mhm.
that's just sitting in there and covered. So because you end up redoing the
Yeah.
ceiling and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Like you had
Had
to
to do a patch.
do a patch and stuff. So like
Cut out some of the ceiling and replace it.
man, this is wild, dude.
But even so, it still wasn't worth letting it sit for years. That's
I know
crazy.
someone's gonna be listening to this going, "That's my cousin." Well, hot damn, that's my cousin.
Maybe we ought to get that checked out.
I know. Where's your cousin live? I don't know if you remember this. I remember my dad walking through there so dang fast, opening doors and like asking
Don't open
questions.
doors.
I was like, I'm looking at him. Like usually I take charge of things with stuff, but I was like, go get it, Dad. It's all you. I don't think I touched anything in that house. And my dad was all like, "Can we look? Got a flashlight?" I'm like, in my mind, I was like, $45,000 off. I don't need to open a door. We're
Just
fine.
expect it to need to be replaced.
It's all got to be replaced. Call the bomb squad. So yeah, that was that was definitely a gross one. So another one that we went through that I think there's, and this one's not like gross, but it's kind of, I guess I would say. Oh, by the way, the lesson on that other one, as far as, like, you can get a good deduction if you run into stuff like that, and we got a
Mhm.
fantastic deduction on the sales price. So definitely is a great way to get that. But another one that you don't think you'd run into, because people would just kind of like not do this, but they did, was tenants who are on the lease, but they don't live there. I'm gonna let Misty run that because she went through that. I wasn't a part of that one as she was. So kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, so we had a situation where a husband and wife, um, they went ahead and rented a property, supposedly because the husband got a job in Dallas, and so they have their actual home, out in Granbury, but they wanted to be closer to the job site, so not having to travel back and forth so much every day. So they were renting a home, um, for the 12 months, so he could be closer to the job site. Um, they totally qualified. Everything was great. No red flags there. So they, went ahead and got the unit, and of course, rent and everything's paid on time. However, anytime there was any kind of maintenance request and we'd show up to maintain the unit, there would be some individuals there that we didn't know. It wasn't
Who are
who
these
the
people?
tenants
Who
were.
are you?
So, after a time or two, you start getting a little suspicious because, the first time it might be just visiting or staying there for a few days or something, or, you know, um, come to find out it was the the tenant's daughter, her boyfriend, and their kids. So what had happened was the parents were renting the property for their daughter.
How'd you find out though? There was another way you found out. It wasn't just going to do maintenance.
Yes,
There a problem arose,
yes, there was a problem with the ant infestation, and
which is, and we do not own this property, by the way. So just a heads up. But there was ant infestation that they were you were working to solve, but they were really pushy on it, right?
Yes,
Like you,
yes. You can only spray every so often. You can't keep spraying like daily and stuff. It is you know chemicals and poison and stuff, and it does take time for them to all take it back to their colony and everything die out. So, but they and then of course when you do put out the chemicals and the spray and all that, you will see more activity happen because they're kind of going, what's
uh,
going on?
freaking out, man. The
And so
snozzberries.
you do need to wait a little bit of time, to let it run its course. And then if it hasn't in a specific amount of time, then you can go ahead and reply, retreat, things like that. But they were getting a little antsy
And
about it.
they kept retreating, right? Like when they
Yeah.
weren't, like they'd call one person out, and then the
Yeah,
ants would.
they try
Like,
to call another company out and like we've already taken care of that. You can't, keep throwing poison out there. And so anyway, their agent had contacted me, which is actually a relative of theirs, and it was the agent that helped them into the property
now here's
that
the crazy
represented
part.
them. And so I was like, so every time we've gone out there, there seems to be some young couple there and some young kids. And she's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's my niece. And I'm like, okay, are they living there? Because I've seen them several times there, and I haven't seen the actual tenants there, other than the first day when I met them and gave them the key. And she's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, they all live there." Um, and I was like, "Okay," because these younger couple and their kids, they are not on the lease agreement. And she's like, "They're not." And of course, they're not because you gave me the information. You were
Mm-hmm.
responsible for giving me the application and their IDs and their paycheck stubs and all that information. And it was only given for the mom and the dad. And of course, the younger couple is over 18. So they would be, you know, required to submit that information as well. So, yeah, that was just a weird situation.
So that was it's a lease violation
Hmm.
essentially.
It is.
It is a lease violation. It's rights for you or for the owner to terminate the lease.
And it's fraud,
It's
if
fraud.
you go in knowingly
Yeah,
doing that, and especially for that agent, that's bad news.
yeah.
That could be
That's
reported.
could be, and we didn't report it. I mean, it's not. It's just that's a karma thing. But I mean, you eventually someone will shoot themselves in the foot. But that knowing that agent knowing going in that they were about to commit fraud, I'm sure they did at some
Hmm.
level, right? And they acted like, oh, I didn't know, And then of course they got caught by. They actually got caught. They actually shot themselves in the foot and got caught on their own doing because they wouldn't just let the treatment work, but
Hmm.
they kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and then you start thinking, well,
Who are these people?
why are yeah, like who are you, and what does your daddy do? Like what are you here for? Like why are you here? Who are you? Because had they just made that one call and let things go and just kind of said, okay, well, or or I'm not condoning, but I'm just saying, treated on their own and handled themselves, they would have never. They probably would still be in the property and no one would know.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing and that they should, but I mean, you know, sometimes people just don't do smart things and they continue to not do smart things. And so they shot themselves in the foot because they kept pushing the issue. And then eventually you guys end up having to settle and be like, hey, you got to go. They ended up owing because of the lease, right? They ended up because they actually ended up
We had to do it early lease termination.
and they ended up owing money on that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, long story short, for all you parents out there, if you're helping your kids out, and they're over 18, put them on the lease. It's not a smart idea not
Hmm.
to. So another one that we went through, which this is actually on a property that we do own, is changing landscaping and moving out of the middle of the night. So I like to kind of title these, right? So they changed the landscaping and moved out in the middle of the night. I'm gonna let Misty jump on that and start that one. So she remembers this more than I do. I just remember the whole gotcha moving. So I'll let Misty kind of
This
explain
one was
that one.
quite a few years back. It was being managed by a property management company. And so the tenant had lived there for a little while. I think she'd, I can't remember if she'd already been there for a full year and was in the middle of her second year, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, she didn't make her payment on time. And so the company reached out to her and she said, oh, I missed a couple of days or something. I was sick and I didn't get paid enough or something, but I'm getting paid next week or something. Is that okay? And so they allowed her to, pay late that month. And then closer to that date where she was going to be making her payment, we happened to drive by the property and you saw somebody like moving some boxes out and stuff.
Yeah.
So you
Gotcha. I see you.
you had talked to the lady, and supposedly she was the sister of the tenant, and said, "Yeah, we're moving her stuff out. She's moving." And so what had happened was her rent money that was supposed to go to us, she decided to move for whatever reason. I don't know what the reason was, but she needed to put a security deposit down at the new location. So instead of paying her rent, she used her rent money to be her security deposit at the new place, and
Yeah.
then was trying to just move out without telling anybody.
Later, we caught her mid
And
action. Actually, I think it was the next day
mhm,
I went over there and they were already all moved out.
yeah,
Right, completely.
yeah.
Did we catch
So
him? We caught him at night, and then
Yeah, and we notified the property management company that they were skipping out,
And
and
the next day I went
so
over there and
they
it was like
served
the
the
sister or whatever.
abandonment notice and took the property back. But we had noticed that so we had a this is a property that has a pool, so it's got a lot of nice landscaping. We had a lot of rock out in the flower beds,
And we
and
used to live there too. That was actually the
yes,
house that we bought to
yes.
to start our family, and
hmm
we just kept it.
And they had put tarps on all the. It's not a huge yard, because the pool takes up a lot of it, but they had put the tarp over all the St. Augustine grass and killed it
Yeah.
and threw a bunch of mulch on top of it. And so every time it rained, all the mulch would like drain into the pool.
Yeah. And the pool's kind of close to the house, so
and
that's a pain in the ass.
and then all the other landscaping areas that had the nice rock inside the borders,
Mhm.
they just covered it with a bunch of mulch. And I'm like, why? So anyway, yeah, that's a something that needed to be charged back to them. But of course, they moved out without telling anybody.
Yeah.
So it's
So
just another expense added to the list
because
that they
es-
would owe.
essentially they're supposed to return the property in the way that
Yes, if they make any changes, it's great for a tenant to feel like it's their home.
Mhm.
And they're paying for their time there. They want to make it their own. Great, but if you're going to make changes like that, they need to be approved.
Yeah. It makes me think of your sister. You always say your sister's like the best tenant. She comes in and redoes all the floors, and then she moves in a year, and then goes to another place and
She does it on her own dime. Yeah.
brand new floors on her own dime. And like, hey, you know, Misty's sister, if you're listening,
We have an opening.
we have
No,
an
I'm just
we have an opening. Unit number such and such. We'll have you in. Was it the uh, no credit or no fully approved, 100%. So anyhow, but yeah, man, I think that's the one thing that people just don't, and those are just different stories. They're not everything we have. I mean, you'll always come across something. You're never gonna cross. It'll never just stop. I think if you're, I'm sure Misty, you would agree that if you just s- are particular in your tenants and try to screen them the best, you can reduce the amount of that headache that you otherwise would come across. But and even
Yeah.
sometimes, you don't. Sometimes you don't. It just happens. But that's kind of why I wanted to go through. I think there's a few little nuggets and lessons in there, that things you can avoid that we went through. And Misty and I mean, I'm sure Misty you'd agree too. We come from the school of hard knocks. We didn't have someone that just told us, "Hey, Christopher, hey Misty, this is how you do this." Like we had to learn a lot of this stuff on our own. And man, as exciting as it was to get $7,000, it surely as hell was not
It
fun to,
cost a lot more than
yeah,
that.
because we had to redo the floor. So nobody told us those things. Nobody said, hey, that don't do that. The property management company was just like, hey, here you go. I think that's another thing too. Is a property management company should help guide newer investors if they can, if they understand it. And I know that's something that you try to do with anybody you work with and manage it to that level. But because we just didn't have anybody, we didn't know, and so those little items, and man, we've seen it all, man. We have seen it all. That one house that we went to, I think it was 2021 or 2020, that was just a complete wreck. It was falling half sideways, like
Mm.
you've just seen it all. You've seen it all, and you've about smelled it all. I think the only thing we haven't experienced or smelled is the smell of death. That's probably
Yeah.
that's like the only one that we haven't. But yeah, she's like,
Knock on
there's a
wood.
wood, Mister. Is this wood? Yeah, yeah. We haven't walked in a house and smelled that one yet. And actually, I hope that don't ever have to. But
Yes.
that's probably the only
Horrible.
one. I mean, you've been to houses that had drugs and whatever, and then of course you kind of skip over some of those that were really bad with drugs. They just straight up need to be demolished. But those are the lessons, man. I think that I hope anybody listening to this can pull from and avoid them by doing things like not accepting all the rent up front, by going and taking pictures ahead of time and hiring someone out to handle that when they manage the property. Walk every single unit of what you're about to buy. Don't just walk. Don't assume that it's going to be this, unless you're like people virtual invest. That's different. I mean, they're having someone else walk it for them,
Yes.
but they still have someone walk it, right? Take pictures, take
Hmm.
videos, something like they don't just they
Not
may not.
they may advertise it as like units, but not that's not always the
Someone still
case.
needs someone still needs to get their eyes on it, or a
Yeah.
video camera on it, or you got this wonderful phone. I mean, it's amazing what you can do now. FaceTime it, so. And then, of course, make sure that your tenants are on the lease. That everybody that lives there that they're supposed to be there, because
Hmm.
that can cause issues down the road. That can cause some huge liability issues in that sense. And on that one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Misty, but that null and voids the entire lease, like entirety. You're not you're 100% in the right on all of that, no matter what happened.
Yeah, that's a lease
It's
violation.
just straight up. So you've got to know those landlord rights. As a landlord, you've got to understand those things. So
And then as far as renting out places, I do recommend that you do require the tenant to have renter's insurance. I've seen a lot of posts lately on some of the forums that I'm in, and a, it, there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding about what renter's insurance is,
yeah,
and some landlords don't realize that there is liability for the tenants in there, so they think it's just for the tenants' belongings.
yeah,
And yes, of course, it does cover that. There's some coverage there to cover their belongings in case something happens. But it's also there for liability because the tenants can do things that they're responsible for. So, like if they are cooking something and they walk off and, the place catches fire, that's a liability.
which, by the way, that's real. Just off topic, my mom has always told me a story of somebody who did that. A friend of hers they knew that went home. He was drunk. I believe he was drunk. Laid out on the couch, like turned the stove on to stir something. Turned the stove on, then on the couch, and just literally burned up on the couch.
Mm.
And that was it. And then my our cousin, um, who was a fire chief, and I don't know if he was fire chief at that time, but was actually the fireman on the scene
Mm.
for that individual. So that happens. Now, I say that because on a landlord perspective, you have no idea that, if he didn't own that house, and of course this is many, many, many years ago, right? But if he didn't own that house, that individual, you know what I mean? Like someone had to have paid for that.
And of course, the landlord should have their own insurance,
Hmm.
and that would probably take care of that in that situation. However, as a landlord, you want to mitigate your expenses as much as possible. And if you're having to put that claim on your insurance, what do you think is going to happen to your policy?
They will drop you.
They will drop you, or they're going to increase
Yeah.
a lot
We,
the
we,
following year, and that's going to follow you for a while. You're going to have higher expenses. But if the tenant has their own policy and they're held liable for that, and then it gets paid from the tenant's policy, not yours, then your policy stays intact with the same rate,
yeah.
and there's no claim on your policy.
Yeah, don't think you haven't experienced insurance till you've been dropped, and we've been dropped, and not willingly either, because of 2021
Mother Nature.
Mother Nature. So don't think that the insurance is going to be 100% on your side, because they're not always on your side. So make sure that you keep yourself covered as well. So
And then also for another point I was going to make.
go ahead, proceed.
So if you do hire a property manager for your properties, be sure when there's maintenance issues. Sometimes the property manager does have some kind of relationship with the people that fix things,
Hmm.
and so they might be
Yeah,
getting a percentage of it back, or some kind of kickback. They're supposed to disclose that if they do. But I would recommend getting several bids from different vendors.
just tell the story, Misty.
So-
She's holding back. She's like, should I just tell it? This is another one. I just, man, it popped in my head another one. I was like, I gotta tell this other one too. Go ahead.
So we have a property at the time was managed by somebody else, and there was an electrical issue that the tenant kept reporting. So they sent out their person, and they're like, "Oh, you need all new wiring in the entire house." And we're like, what? And
That's expensive.
yes, it was like 10,000, 15,000. I don't remember. It was a large amount. And we're like, what is going on over there? So we're like, we want a second bid. And they're like, well, we don't have time. We have to fix this right now. And I was like, I'm not spending that kind of money without a second
Mm-hmm.
opinion. And uh, we called somebody and we're trying to set them up to go out. And the property manager was like, well, we've got to resolve this or we got to let them out of the lease. And I was like, well, we're trying to resolve it. We're just getting a second opinion. And so we got our guy out there and he fixed the problem for $350.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, whatever company that is that said that we needed all new wiring. And this is after we had already gave them, I think it was like $400 or $500, and they spent the whole day out there trying to locate the problem.
Yeah. Hey.
And then they decided, well, we can't really find the problem, but you just need all new electrical.
Yeah.
And we're like, that doesn't make sense. And then on another property that we had, that the same company was managing, a little bit later, we had an AC issue at one of the homes, and so they sent the company out, and we didn't know what company it was. They just sent, their vendor, and then we get a report that we need an all new AC unit. We need a new one, and we're like, what? This can't be. And so I'm like, what company is that? And they told me the company. I said, okay, that's just their policy.
Yeah.
They want to replace everything. So I said, do not ever send that company to any of my properties ever again. They are not allowed at my property. And then we sent somebody else out, and it just needed to be cleaned, and it was like $200-300.
Yeah. And but the thing was that they were.
And we still have that same AC unit to date.
Mm-hmm. And the other part though was they were getting. So we came to find out later from one of that property management's uh, agents, who was no longer with them, that that property management company was getting kickbacks and they weren't disclosing it. So they were getting kickbacks from that
Company.
company that they were sending out. And of course, the bigger the bill, the bigger the kickback, right? Quite
Yeah.
possibly. I don't know what how much they had it structured, but
That's not our business,
that's not
but
ours.
but we have learned from that.
Yeah, yeah. So, but and that's what we don't try to disclose the names because we're not trying to slander anybody. It's more just for us to educate anybody out there that's going through that to do things like that way.
Things to look out for.
Yeah, and that's actually why I know you don't charge anything extra on top of that. You actually ate a few things before, property management wise, but yeah, you definitely get double or
Hmm.
triple, you know, quotes.
Yeah.
Don't just do one and be done.
And it's okay to use your own vendors, as long as whoever manages your property is agreeable to that,
Yeah,
which I definitely am. If you have a vendor that you like and you want to use, then that's your property. You can do that. I'll schedule, the times where they can enter with the tenant and all that.
I think any property
But
management company should do that. I mean,
mhm,
whether it's
some don't allow it,
some
but
don't, but they
a
should. I
lot of
mean,
them do.
and then even if you self manage, still to make sure you get multiple opinions and quotes as well. So
Yep.
one more I wanted to bring up before we cut it loose is and we went through a situation where you had to basically dig under the entire house,
Hmm.
and that was one that was in Granbury,
Yep.
and that one was like a $20,000 bill, was it?
Just for the digging. Yeah. The
Yeah,
digging and the pipe. Yeah.
break that one down.
So I got a call from the tenant there. They woke up and walked in the kitchen and were standing in a puddle of water, and they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So we called the plumber, and they came out and they, cleared the lines, and everything was fine. But then they're like, I think you have a more serious problem, but we're going to have to do the camera inspection to find out. So I can come back later in the week and do that, and see what's causing this. And I said, okay. So they came out later in the week and they said, okay, so about 14, 15 feet down, your pipe just disappears. You have no pipe.
Poof. It's like
It's gone.
Houdini.
I was like, well, where did it go? I don't know. So yeah, that's what the problem was. Once so much water was going through and it had nowhere to go, so it just started coming back up.
And that was a cast iron pipe?
Yes. And the house was built in the 80s, so it wasn't like extremely old. We have older homes, so I don't know
Again,
what happened, but
the ugly side, right? The stuff you
yeah.
just don't know.
Yeah. And unfortunately, our insurance coverage didn't cover the pipe being under the house and stuff. They just covered the damage that it
Isn't
caused.
that nuts though?
Yeah.
We won't cover that. But if I don't fix it, you're
It's
gonna
going to
be
cause more.
you're gonna be fixing a lot more than this pipe. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. That's nuts to say. Well, we'll cover the damage, but we won't. But
We won't cover the problem.
you know what I mean? Go to the doctor and be like, it's just, you're not fixing the problem. Like you're not. You're throwing a Band-Aid on it, and it's
Yeah,
still gonna keep going, and it won't stop.
correct.
It won't stop because you're talking about water
Mhm.
just seeping up.
Mhm.
So what happened? How'd the fix go?
So, I got 3 bids and it it ranged quite a bit in pricing,
Yeah.
but we went with the company that we've been working with on smaller jobs. This was our first big job
Hmm.
with them, but we trusted them. They actually were the lowest bid, so it's not always go with the lowest bid, but we were comfortable with them because we've had previous work done by them on other properties and had a relationship with them, so we were comfortable with it. So we went ahead and hired them to go out and do the job, and then we still did the insurance claim because all the flooring and baseboard and all that had to be replaced, and then they could cover the expense of clearing the line and the camera inspection
Yeah.
and all of that. So we went ahead and made that claim because that flooring was just installed like a year before, so it was pretty new flooring, and it's almost 1,700 square feet home, so all of it had to be replaced.
Mm.
So yeah, went ahead and made the claim, and I can tell you that is the best experience I've ever had with an insurance company.
Yeah.
The guy went out, inspected the property. I never even met him. Just scheduled everything with him. He showed up. We've talked on the phone a few times, and he went out and looked at it, and he said, "Pick whatever flooring you want. Send me the invoice." And they had it before all that. They had to send out their mitigation crew and stuff to clean up everything and let it dry for a couple of days. But they covered that directly, and then they said, "Pick out your flooring. Send me the invoice." And he said, "You know what? Since you did your due diligence and you got 3 different bids, and you got a really good price on the job." He
Yeah.
said, "You did a really good job." He said, "We're just going to cover it all."
Dude. So much luck.
And within 5 minutes, I had a Zelle payment to my account. And I was like, "Oh my God."
Accomplished. And meanwhile, just full disclosure, Misty, myself, and the boys, we're living in the living room
For over a
for
year.
over a year because we got hit by the freeze, and it took over a year to fix all that.
Yeah.
So
And we went without water
for 30
for
days,
30 days in our own home.
and then this bad boy hits, and Misty gets the insurance covered. So, but I mean, that's again it, it may not be the ugly side as far as like the look, right? But the man, had that thing not got covered, that could have been a $20,000 expense because you're talking about
Yes.
digging and flooring and all those things. And so, that's why they say when you make you make your money when you buy right, not
Mhm.
buy when you buy, not when you sell. Because I mean, we bought that house for what we consider a steal, you
Mhm.
know, but it never did we walk in that house and felt foundation or felt this or felt that or thought that like there's going to be a leak. In fact, we bought it thinking, well, Misty bought it thinking that maybe one day we could live in the country club. I'm like,
Retire.
the only thing she did was give me a chance to play Travis Tritt. I'm a member. I'm a member of the country club as we pulled up after closing on the property. We had Marissa with us that day too. Yeah, we pulled up pulled up and showed my card to the gate to the guard at the gatehouse at the country club with Travis Tritt playing. I'm a member of the country club, blaring it loud. I'm sure that guard has heard that more than once, but I had to do it. So, but anyhow, yeah, that's man, that's the ugly side of real estate. I hope that you guys out there that are buying property or your landlords that you don't have to experience those
Yeah.
things and
Learn from others' experience.
yeah, that's it, man. That's what it's all about. Learn from others' experience. So, but man, guys, thank you for tuning in. I do want to say this before we close out and we cut everything. Uh, cut out is, man, if we don't advertise in this show. We just do this because we enjoy it and we want to share knowledge and of course, we get to learn too, right? When you help others learn, you get to learn as well. So, the only fee we ask is that you share this. If you learn something and you feel like that you got some value from this, share this with your friends, share this with family members, other, fellow investors that you know of. Just share the show. That's the only fee that we ask. And if you do that, that helps us because we don't advertise, for this show. We just do it out of our own. We enjoy it. So, but other than that, we will catch you guys next time.